speaking of our advice, I'm going to go to the next question we got that I wanted to touch on quick. Somebody was asking me, we've put up a bunch of videos recently about coaching stuff and coaching communication, because the episode we did a couple weeks ago was about coaching communication. And a parent asked, and it was too difficult to answer in the comments, so I wanted to get your, and I wanted you to be the one to answer it too, is he was asking, we've talked about it before, but as a parent, when do you step in if you think your kid is in a negative situation? So it was a very general comment, but this person said, my kid has really bad coaching and he's feeling a little bit discouraged or kind of losing the love of hockey because of his coach. At what point is it appropriate for the parent to step in? And that was all the detail that I got on it. So I know we can go a couple different ways.
Yeah,
but
I guess the question would be, like, Charlie was in a couple negative situations, not negative, but situations where he wanted to get addressed, right?
Yep.
Obviously, depending on the age, but you got to get as much information as you can from your child. You just don't want him to be like poopy pants and just doesn't like certain things about certain things. You got to find out if it's actual or real problem. As an adult, this is what I always did with Charlie. I said, if I found out the information and then asked him if he was comfortable talking to the coach about it, I'll go in with you. And to me, that's the answer.
Yep.
If you could set up the call for your son or whatever, or have the son do it, but find out the information and have a conversation with your coach. With your son do most of the speaking. Mm-hmm. If your son's not capable of doing that, then you just have a normal conversation with your coach. I don't think, like, here's the thing, right? It's how you go into. There's always two sides to a story, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? No, but there is two sides to the story. It's one perception. There's three sides: someone's perception, someone else's perception, and the actual truth. Mm-hmm. So a kid could be relaying messages the wrong way. They'd be taking things the wrong way, or they could be totally right, whatever. But if you go in there and talk to the coach, like, first of all, don't look at talking to the coach as like, oh my God, I'm doing the worst thing in the world. First of all, you're the parent. You need to protect your kids at all costs, right? I'm not saying bubble wrap your kids, but you got to make sure there's not bad things happening. So find the issue, make an appointment or make a meeting. In person is always the best, in my opinion. If the coach doesn't want to, that's an issue there in itself. But talk to them just like humans. Don't go accusing. That's one of the worst things you can do is you start pointing the fingers and realizing that the message was lost. To have a normal conversation with your son and just let people know how you feel. Mm-hmm. And the best thing is let your son do it. And I could say that's the best thing because I did that to my son twice when he was having issues. Not issues. Coaches were a coach was putting him in a situation where he just gave him a choice, but he was giving him a choice, but saying, "But I'd like you to do this." So the coach is being passive aggressive on what he really like, but they gave my son a choice, and he was conflicted about it. So I said, "Well, my wife and I sat him down. Let's talk about it." We talked about it. It's okay. If you're going to do it, I'll go in with you and we can talk to your coaches. So we sat there and there was 4 or 5 coaches sitting there, and he did it with a set of balls on him. And the coaches looked at him and went, "You can come in this office and talk like that. No problem, kid." So he's done that a couple of times. The good thing about it is that my son's learned how to communicate, stand up for himself a little bit. He had dad there to back him up.
Yep.
Right. To wing chun people if they got out of hand. And the other thing is this is carried. He's not afraid to go and talk to the coach if you had to.
Right.
It's never a shouting match or a screw you match. It's just going, let's have a conversation. It's an adult thing to do, and we should always be able to do it. So yes, help your kid out, man.
Yeah,
100%. Don't let them get there. Your kid's not a punching bag.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, seriously, I've heard this so many times with parents, and it's like, God, don't stop being a parent. A lot of people don't want to rock the boat, they say. I don't want to get on the coach's bad side. I don't want the politics of hockey to ruin my kid's chances. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm like, but that's your kid.
Right.
You're not rocking a boat, and this guy's not going to ruin anyone's life. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many times I heard this.
Yep.
Protect your kid.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify a little bit because what you're saying, basically the situation you're speaking to is when it's something like, let's say, ice time, or let's say opportunity, or let's say a solvable problem where your kid maybe feels like he doesn't know what's going on, or he's mentally, that's the kind of situation you're talking about.
Or you're both confused.
Right. So if that's the situation, then it's appropriate. You can go have a conversation. You can go have a conversation with the coach.
Yeah.
And it's not, what I want to emphasize on that, it's not a us versus you conversation. It's just we're talking about what's going on, just so we're all clear on what the expectations are, what the situation is. And so you can walk out of the conversation thinking, okay, like now we understand where the coach is coming from. We know what we need to do to get in a better situation, whatever.
Yeah.
What I want to be clear on, because we've talked about this before, is the mom and dad calling the coach every time there's a problem.
Yeah.
Agent calling the coach every time there's a problem. And whatever. So you need to have like some common sense about what the situation is and is it appropriate to talk? Because for most of the time, what we say is you want your kid to go handle the situation if they can.
Yep.
If it's something that's not appropriate, then obviously mom and dad need to step in. If it's something dangerous or incredibly damaging or negative, then you probably should just look at going somewhere else anyways. But that would be in a time where mom and dad have to step in now because, like you said, you want to protect your kid. But for the most part, it's a pretty fine line between you're being over-involved mom and dad and you're helping your kid to deal with the situation. Because that's a lot of youth sports. A lot of youth sports is learning that kind of thing, like how to deal with when you feel like you're being treated unfair or you're unclear about what's going on in a certain situation. So I just want to make that clear. There's a line between it's too much, you're over-involved, that sweet spot of, okay, mom and dad help a little bit, try to get our kid to do most of the talking and work his own problems out. And then other end where you're not getting involved at all when you should be. So there's 3 different categories of situations there. And we're kind of talking about, and I'm assuming the comment was this kind of middle ground where he said, my kid's kind of losing the love for the game or whatever. So that seems to be an appropriate time where, okay, help your kid solve the problem. But it still seems to me like the kid should be going and doing, the problem solving and you're kind of there for support. It didn't seem by the comment that he's talking about a dangerously negative situation, which obviously you would need to be more involved in that. And it also didn't come across as they're over-involved where they're going to talk about every little thing because that's not good either, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. That's all I wanted to say to add to what you're pointing out there.
Yeah. There's a fine line with talking to coaches, but I think parents should talk with their kids first, then go see your coaches, but let the kids do as much as they possibly can.
Yeah. Okay. That's another thing too, is it doesn't have to go 0 to 100 either. Like it should be some increments to problem solve, so you want to use kind of the minimum effective dose method where it's, okay, kid is identifying a problem. Okay. Kid, try to solve the problem. Okay. Parents and kid try to solve the problem. Parents and kid talk to the coach to try to solve the problem. Parents step in to try to, so there's a spectrum. It doesn't have to be you never say anything and then all of a sudden you're going in and screaming at the coach about whatever situation, right?
Yeah,
so
it's not the most effective way.
No, so you have to have some common sense, obviously, with how you're dealing with it. So without knowing the circumstances, that's kind of the guidance I would say too. So that's that.
Yeah, so that's interesting.